All right, I think we're going to go ahead and get started. Everybody wants to sit down. The lights are really bright up here. All right, so thanks again for coming. I think we're going to spend a little bit of time. You guys have got some worksheets on your table, so this is going to be interactive. Nobody has to worry, but we're going to have a little bit of an interactive portion of this as well. But first, I thought I'd start by, part of what we're here to talk about is how we elevate women and basically ourselves in corporate culture. And one of the things I thought I would do is first give you a little bit of context about who I am and a little bit of background about me and kind of where this fits in with my life and my career. So if I were to read for you the resume story of me, my resume would read something of the fact of I went to Virginia Tech. I was a double major in finance and management with a minor in computer science. I graduated. I got a job straight out of college. I wasn't really looking for a new job. My father, on the other hand, thought I should have a new job. So my father was shopping my resume around. Little did I know. I got a phone call from Deloitte, and I got hired into Deloitte, and that was 23 years ago. So I've been at Deloitte for 23 years. I worked in our commercial practice first for 15 years, basically based mostly out of New York. But I also worked in Paris. I worked in the UK. I worked in Singapore, opening offices for us all around the globe. All at a very young age, at a very young career start when I started at Deloitte. After about 15 years, I was asked to actually move down and start to head up some of our work in our federal practice down in DC. I really had no desire to be in our federal practice, but someone said, we're going to turn an audit client into a consulting client. Can you go give it a shot? I said, sure. I said, I'm happy to do that. So I went down, opened that business up, and we actually grew something from zero to about $75 million within about 3 years. For the last 4 years, I've actually been leading our cyber practice. So our cyber practice is about 1,500 people, about $350 million around the US, and I'm very proud to do that. As well as the other thing that I do in my spare time, I also co-sponsor our well-being, which is very important to me. So lots of things. We could sit there and say it's been a great career, 23 years. I've been a partner at Deloitte for 13. So incredibly well professional from a professional resume perspective, all great. The one thing you don't see when you read my resume is that I almost died 8 years ago. So 8 years ago, I was really tired. The only symptom I had was being incredibly tired. How many of you try to push through every time you're tired? Right. I would probably have raised my hand as well. Kept telling myself, it's nothing. You're just overworked. There's a lot going on. Some things, don't worry about it. You'll be fine. Went to a bunch of doctors. Doctors all looked at me and said, you're fine. You're overworked. Just keep doing things. Get some more rest. How many hours of sleep do you get? I looked at them. I lied. 6 hours of sleep. They're like, you don't get 4 hours of sleep. Well, come on, Deb. Get more sleep. You'll be fine. I kept feeling tired, literally to the point where I couldn't go up the stairs. Something was wrong. So I told myself, I'm going to go to the best doctors because they're going to be able to figure out what's wrong with me. So I put in to go to Hopkins, and Hopkins has got about a 6-month wait to get in. And so I kept increasingly getting tired and tired and tired and more tired. And I go to Hopkins, and my husband and my daughter, who are both sitting back in the audience, hi husband, hi daughter. We all go to Hopkins, and we decide we're going to do that the Monday after Easter because I was like, oh, we should go to the zoo, and we can go to the aquarium. They're both looking at me like, okay, seriously, we're going to go to the doctors. So we go to the doctors. They do a series of tests. I still make everybody go to the aquarium. We go to the aquarium. We go home. And there's 7 missed messages on, at the time, voicemail. 7 missed messages. I'm like, this is the world's best doctor. They call you back 7 times. I haven't been out of there that long. My husband looks at me and he goes, this can't be a good thing. Like, no doctor is calling you back 7 times, right? So I go to call them back, and they called right when we were going to go call back. And it's about 8 o'clock at night at this point. And the doctor goes, I just emailed you a prescription. I was like, great, you guys have figured out what's wrong with me. They're like, no, you need to head to the hospital immediately. And I was like, excuse me? What are you talking about? And they said, you need to head to the hospital, and you need to get an emergency blood transfusion. And everything went through my head, like, that can't possibly be. I don't want to go to the hospital at night because that's when the drunks go. Like, I'm going to be on the 3rd shift by then. Like, there's 0 chance I'm doing that. So needless to say, we show up at the hospital. And if you ever want to get through the hospital really quickly, emergency blood transfusion, by the way, is the way to go. Because like I skipped the line, which did have a lot of drunks sitting there in the waiting room. And I go back in, and I'm always, I'm never really white, like in terms of tone of my skin. And the nurse comes back and she goes, those doctors at Hopkins, they really think they know everything all the time. And I'm like, what are you talking about? She's like, there's no way you could need this. Your skin's not pale enough. You're not white enough. You don't look like all the signs. And then again, a whole nother round of emotions go through my body. I'm like, shoo, I was like, I don't need a blood transfusion today. She comes back about 15 minutes later with blood in hand and apologizing profusely and basically said, you're not going anywhere. So long story short, I have a very severe autoimmune disease that has caused my blood to basically leak internally in my body. And unlike an external wound, you don't know that you're actually internally bleeding. So the reason I kept getting tired, again, for those people who don't know, because I didn't know any of this, but your red blood cells carries oxygen to your brain. So the other thing that apparently should have happened had I not gotten that blood transfusion within hopefully a day or two, they said, is I should have had a stroke. Because oxygen, again, to your brain is what you need for all of us to be there. And so incredibly, incredibly difficult for me to process all of that because I went through so many doctors telling me nothing was wrong, to feeling incredibly depressed, to wondering what was wrong, to being in the hospital, to getting a blood transfusion, to all of a sudden wondering what the heck is wrong with me. And so when they finally diagnosed me with this autoimmune disease, I now have to get IV medication every 6 weeks, and I'm on chemotherapy drugs every day to keep my autoimmune system suppressed. And I don't say any of that at all to make anybody feel sorry for me. I don't say any of it for you to wonder like, oh gosh, what's wrong? How can we help her? What does she need? I say it because what I think it does is it gives us grit. And I like to call the grit factor. It's what makes each of us who we are in every day of our life. You don't need to have almost died to have grit. There's many things that give you grit and make you move every single day. And part of what we're gonna do today is think about those things that make each of you unique and think about those things that also help you build courage. So how many of you think that you always, like if you have an idea, you always run with it? How many of you run with that idea? That's what I expected. How many of you procrastinate? How many of you think it's a really good idea and never ever actually execute? Okay. So I will tell you a lot of times when you've got those amazing ideas, run with it. Have those ideas and go with it because they're great ideas. And whether they succeed or fail, I say this all the time, you're never going to be successful in this world if you don't embrace failure. So failure isn't because you're a horrible person. It's not because you have weakness. It's not because you did something bad. Failure helps you learn. The important thing about it is how do you learn quickly from failure? So another thing I think we often do and what we'll be talking about throughout today is how do you rebound from that? How do you not allow yourself to, again, sit there and think for 24 hours, I can't believe I did that. I can't believe I did that. 3 days later, I still can't believe I did that. A week later, can you believe I did that? We shouldn't be doing that for a week. We shouldn't be doing that for a day. But here's the other thing is how do you change those things? And so we're going to walk through what it means to be courageous and what it means to define yourselves as something unique. And so we do have some worksheets. So we're going to go into, if I can work the clicker, that's me. There we go. So each of you have this worksheet there. They don't look like these bubbles, but there's a laundry list of things. And so I just thought maybe if you guys could take 3 to 5 minutes, and if you look at what do these attributes mean to you? What is it like? What do you think that you would address yourselves and how would you identify? Feel free to select as many of them as you think would make you who you are. And I'll give you guys, like I said, about 3 minutes and then I'm going to interject in a minute. And then also feel free to write your own words. If there's words at the bottom that you actually think define you better or might make you unique in your own way. All right, and now I want you to think if you only could choose one. All right, so hopefully you've chosen one. So take 60 seconds each, turn to your neighbor and explain that one unique thing to your neighbor and why it's unique to you. 60 seconds. Doesn't matter if you know your neighbor or not. 60 seconds each, so that'll be 2 minutes. All right, we'll wrap that up for a minute. We've got lots of interactive exercises here, but hopefully by all the talking, everybody felt empowered to feel unique about themselves and special about themselves. So how many of you felt good about talking about yourselves? How many of you does that come natural to? Good, like that. Usually most people are like, yeah, no. So it's important to understand what makes you you, because each of you brings something unique to the table. And again, I asked you to choose one. Hopefully you had many things in there that made you who you are and what that package is. And as I said before, I'm not defined by my autoimmune disease. It is part of who I am. It defines who part of me is. My mother also died when I was incredibly young, and so that defines part of me and who I am. And again, I would go back to my grit, and I talked about grit before. So part of that, and the reason I share that, is again, not, oh, I can't believe that, how could you be young, not have a mother, how is it like to grow up from that capacity? It's more about taking things that happen in our lives and figuring out how they can actually empower us to do things. So I think about that. So when my mother died, I was a teenager. We all, how many of us were rebellious teenage girls, boys in the audience? How many of us were rebellious in our teenage years? Me, totally. Imagine having that happen and being that same person and to have a parent die, right? So for a long time, having a lot of remorse for, I was a crazy teenager at the same time my mother had both breast and pancreatic cancer. Took her to her chemotherapy appointments. I did lots of things with her. And so you could sit there and say, I was a horrible human being, or you can sit there and say, I was a normal teenager that was probably just being rebellious, going through a very difficult point in her life. And at the end of the day, it's about thinking about what things you want to do with that. So I have a path to determine. And everybody would tell me that one of the things that I'm very, very good at is crisis. So whenever we're in a crisis, I'm very good at being able to shut off certain things to be able to get people through a crisis. And part of that is driven from the fact that I got myself through having my mother die when I was a teenager. So when I think about when things happen and things happen in my life, so we have lots of crises in our daily jobs, but I also have lots of crises in what I do for work. So since I lead our cyber practice, you guys can all imagine there's lots of cyber data breaches, there's lots of cyber instances, there's lots of adversaries out there looking to attack our country and our corporations on any given point in time. A lot of them have people in panic. So when I have an organization calls me that says that they've just had a data breach or that they are being hacked by somebody in a nation state, there's a lot of reason to get anxious or have anxiety over those types of situations. So my ability to calmly sit and talk to people and help them get from point A to point B comes in a lot of handy when we have those types of situations. And for the longest time, I could never figure out why am I so good at these things. And candidly, that's part of the reason why I'm good at that, is how to handle a situation and be able to move from that. So again, understanding a lot of who you are and the attributes, and that's why we did this exercise, the attributes that you have bring character to each of you. And if you understand what that character is and how you can evolve with that character, you're going to be even stronger personally and professionally as you work through your evolution, as you look at where your horizon is. So one of the things that we've got is we obviously we're here to talk about women supporting women, empowering women. There's lots of very big women on the, I was always amazed, like, what do they do with that when they're done with it? Do you think they cut it out and put it in there? Like, is that like posters on the ceiling or something? They're very big. It's a little intimidating over there. But we should all be really proud of where women are in today's day and age, right? We've made so many advancements, whether that's advancements. I now live in DC, so there's lots of advancements. When we look at women in Congress and women on the Hill and women taking more jobs in and out of congressional offices, but we're only making a dent. You think about the number of women doctors and the number of women athletes and the number of women CEOs, we're still only making a dent in the single and low double-digit numbers. And so how do we best encourage each other to have what we call a corporate culture or culture of courage, right? And building upon this courage that I was just talking about a little bit ago. And so when we talk about, I mean, there's many people that were up here on the audience, I'm sure you saw both of the panels, talking about the courage they had, whether that was the first soccer player, referees, coaches. I mean, we had so many stories, amazing stories of women that all had the courage to take that first step and do what they felt was important to them in their careers. And so we're going to look at activity 2, which is really how do you look at having your story. So obviously you heard my story. You can look at other types of stories. So again, the one we're going to focus on in the second activity is, have you ever been the first fill in the blank or the only fill in the blank? And again, I can talk about lots of times having lived my last 23 years in cyber and technology. I'm typically the only woman, particularly the only woman executive. I can add the only woman executive that wears leather pants to work, which actually does happen on a regular basis. But that's me, and it makes me unique in who I am. And so at the end of the day, there could be lots of firsts that you have or onlys that you have, but it's how do you actually embrace those onlys and make you even stronger than you are today. So in the second exercise, what I'd like you to do is, again, work in small groups. I think you can break up. We've got tables here. You guys can split in halves over there. And talk about, have you been the only woman ever blank? And it could be anything. Again, it could be a person from a small town, introvert. It could be based on race. It could be based on what your background is. It could be anything of anything in terms of the first of something. And what I want you guys to talk about is, did you use it to your advantage, or did you use it as a detriment? So again, I can think of situations along my career where I've done both, but what I want us to encourage each other to talk about is how we can actually use them to our advantage. Because when we see the lens on ourselves, often the first thing is I'm an introvert, that must be a bad thing, because I don't speak up. Or there's too many extroverts in the room and I don't have a minute to speak. Or you could be an extrovert. I'm talking all the time and no one wants to hear me, so I need to shut up, right? So there's easy ways, which is me, by the way. So it's easy to take an advantage or a disadvantage for the I'm the only, whatever it is that you want to fill in the blank. So part of what this exercise, I want somebody else who's not you to hear what you're saying, because they're automatically going to be like, oh, the positive is this, or oh, the opposite is this, or did you ever think about thinking of it in a different way? And that's what I want this exercise to do. So one person will start with the I was the only fill in the blank. And I'd like you guys to have a discussion around how to turn those into advantages versus actually looking at it from a negative lens. So we'll give you guys about 5 to 10-ish minutes on that one. It'll be a little bit longer, and I'll walk around as well. So go ahead and start with that. If I go around, we'll talk. I know, it's on. my mic on? My mic's not on. All right, let's go ahead and regroup. I was going to leave some time for Q&A too, because I was told I should leave some time for Q&A. So, okay, so hopefully everybody, I walked around and heard a bunch of different things, and what I thought was fascinating is listening to so many different onlys. But again, the conversation around okay and, not so what, but, or oh, you were the only this or you were the only that. How do you empower yourselves to turn that into something that's an added value? And the other thing too that I heard a couple of people talk about was self-awareness. So what does it mean if I'm the only? Does that mean that I should alter my behavior? Does that mean that I should be more aware? What should I do? I will tell all of you to never change. Don't change who you are because you're the only. Figure out what that means from a self-awareness perspective, because other people are paying attention. And so again, I don't mean that because it's a bad thing. If you're the only introvert in a room of extroverts, how do you get your words in? How do you look and actually become more comfortable with speaking up if it's a challenge for you as an introvert? If you're an extrovert and you notice someone isn't speaking in a room, pause for a minute. I know it might be challenging. Sometimes it's challenging for me. Take a sip of water, pause, have some silence in the room, because then maybe it'll make it more comfortable for the introvert to speak up and have their voices heard. Because the other thing that's really important to understand is that everybody with all of these characteristics is very important to who you are, and that each of you add value to the conversation, to the relationship, to the profession, to the activity that you're engaged in at any given point in time. And the more self-aware that you can be about those things will help you empower yourself and to be the best version of yourself. So as we think about what those things are in the only, and again, I brought a couple of only things in, the only thing that's going to make this work, no pun intended, is if you actually commit to making some changes. And again, we talked about earlier, I had everybody raising how many times we procrastinate, how many times we have a good idea, how many times do we think we're going to do something different. I'm going to ask a question. How many of you live in what I call what if world? What if this were to happen? What if that were to happen? What if this were to happen? Okay, so one of my big mantras is not to live in what if world. So how much positivity do we think we get out of what if world? Any? No, because what if is about something in the future that, as far as I can tell, we can't yet change. I mean, if we can, I'm going to be the first one to try and change it. I'm just kidding. But if there's something we can change, it can't be the what if world. We can't change what's going to happen tomorrow. We don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. We also usually live in the what if world when we're talking about yesterday. What if I had done this differently? What if I had done this differently? What if I had said that instead of this? Well, here's the bottom line. You didn't. Doesn't matter. Doesn't mean it's good or it's bad. It just means that you didn't. And so trying to change what I call habits. How many of you brush your teeth today? And my daughter's in the back. Don't raise your hand back there if you didn't, but I think I saw her brush her teeth. How many of you brush your teeth today? How many of you brush your teeth more than once a day? Okay. How many of people believe that they have created a habit of brushing their teeth? Okay. How many of you think that when you were a child, you probably ate the toothpaste while you were learning how to brush your teeth? Okay. Would you call yourself a failure because of that? Okay. So what I'm going to encourage each of you to do is create new habits. It didn't take you very long, maybe for some of you it did, to learn to brush your teeth. No judgment on how long it took you to learn. I probably ate the whole tube of toothpaste, I think, when I was a child, because that was more fun. But you learned it, and you brush your teeth. And how many of you forget? Sometimes, I don't know, late night out, you forgot to brush your teeth. You woke up in the morning, you're rushing out, and mouthwash is not an alternative to brushing the teeth, just saying. But many of you may do that. And so if you do that, you still will brush your teeth. You're creating a habit. So ask yourself, why don't you create habits about telling yourself how strong you are? Why don't you create a habit about not living in what if world? Why don't you create a habit about thinking about things positively instead of negatively always? And so again, I'm an odd numbers kind of person, so I try to create 3 to 5 new habits a year. I don't try to create 50, I don't try to create 1,000, but I try to create habits. And I have people around me help me remember what habits I'm trying to create. And that hopefully those habits will help me be much more positive, outgoing, energetic, fill in the blank with whatever word you want to choose there, but I'm choosing consciously to be more self-aware and create new habits for myself. So you'll have a commitment card that's on there as well. It's a handout, or I don't know if they cut them. I think they did, yeah. And I want each of you, I know it says first name, last name. I'm not taking them back, so don't worry that anybody else is going to read them. But I want you to make a commitment to yourselves. You are the most important human being in this room right now, you, each of you. So make a commitment to yourselves of what you would like to do. You can set whatever period of time you want to do, but that you're going to actually look to create a new habit so that each of you create a culture of courage, empower yourselves, empower others. So I'll give you a minute or two to write down. You can write 5, you can write 2. Again, I'm an odd number, so 3 or 5 are usually mine. And then I want you to keep these so that you remember every day what habits you're looking to recreate. I saw a lot of writing, which is good. People who didn't write and said, I'll just remember later, you won't. Make sure you write it down. And then the more important thing, like I said, is really use these. It's great ways to remind yourself, and I have little tricks as well, because again, it's a habit. So let's not all get hard on ourselves if we don't create it overnight. It doesn't happen right away. Again, it took you guys time to learn how to brush your teeth and to remember and to make it a habit. Even with me, with What If World, when I decided to not live in What If World anymore, I literally would make my password. It's not anymore, so I'm not sharing anything bad from a cyber perspective, says the cyber person. But my password used to be literally no What If World, because how many times do you change your password on your laptop? A lot, right? Or putting Post-its on mirrors, or putting something in your purse, something that's going to remind you how to create that habit so that you get in the habit of doing what you're committing to each of yourselves. So I'm proud of all of you because I saw a lot of writing. So be sure to, again, take those with you and keep them. And as I said, I've got time for Q&A. I'm an incredibly transparent person, so whatever you want to ask is game, I think. Maybe I'll save that judgment for later. So questions, thoughts, anybody? Anybody? Yep. We have mics too if people can't hear, which is probably me. Oops. Nope. Nope. You could project too. I could walk over there and hear you also. Uh-huh. Uh-huh. Okay, good. So for those of you who couldn't hear, the question was, I don't live in a what-if world, but yet I work in the risk part of Deloitte, which obviously I have to do what-if scenarios. So in my professional life, I can live in the what-if world all day long. It's the Deborah life, because again, what-if world for me, like what if I had said this, what if I had done that? It's negative energy on who you are. For my clients, what if a tsunami happens and we need to look at your supply chain? It's easy to do. And again, with my story before of when my mom died, one of the things, like I said, is easy for me to cut off and just keep moving forward. There's nothing personal associated with that assessment and work and what if. So I'm actually really good at scenario planning. So the what if world in the professional life is great. I think what holds people back is the what if world when you look at it personally. So that's when I say I don't live in the what if world. It's me personally, not in my work world. I live in a lot of that with the risk, by the way. Yep. So I love what I do, and I love what I do 23 years later. How exciting is that? I actually think I love what I do because the challenge I have every day is different. I mean, we're in a services organization that, I mean, I hate to say it, we're selling, ourselves and our capabilities and what we do. Like I said before, I've been all over the world. I've worked with cyber, I've done technology, I work with amazing people. I work in an organization also that empowers women. So we've got great leadership that are women at the leadership level, that are males at the leadership level, but that truly believe in empowerment and opportunity. It's going to sound really hokey, no pun intended, since I went to Virginia Tech. If anybody knows that the Hokies the mascot, you can ask me later what that is. But so it really is the people. I'm surrounded by amazing people. I mean, there's many of them here today. I mean, I'm surrounded by amazing people every day. It doesn't mean that there's not some people that I'm not always that crazy about. But for the most part, I'm surrounded by amazing people, and I've had such great opportunities. The other thing, and I joke about this a lot at Deloitte, is I'm pretty sure we paint buildings somewhere. And basically, if it's something you want to do in the consulting world, at least how my brain works, I have an opportunity to do it here. So why not try it here? Unless I want to go do something completely different, be a doctor, go build huts in Uganda, which was a dream of mine for quite some time, to be honest with you. But unless I want to go do something completely different, I have such great opportunities. And I think because I'm constantly changing what I do on not like a daily basis, but on a regular basis, I'm constantly changing what I do. It gives me that passion to actually get up and enjoy not only what I'm doing every day, but the people I'm surrounded by every day. So, thanks. Yep. Okay. So she asked, what does success look like for me? This. And I don't say that cockily or egotistically or anything from that perspective. I don't aim for success, to be honest with you. I also don't aim for perfect. There is no perfect in my world, and again, I'm pretty sure my husband and daughter could attest to that back there in the back of the room. Success for me is being happy at this point. I'm lucky to be alive. And so when I think about success for me, do I aim for the glass ceiling? I actually hope I can break it. And candidly, it's different for me today than it was before. Today, it's the fact that I literally love the fact that, this is what I wear to work. And the number of, candidly, young females that come up to me and say, I love that you're breaking barriers and you're not, wearing a three-piece suit or you're not in a dress with heels. And don't get me wrong, I have those too, and I wear those as well. But the fact that I can do that, my boss actually says, you're really nutty, Deborah. Like, you come up with these ideas and you just do it. And he goes, and that's what I love about you. Like, the fact that you'll just do things. One thing that you don't see up here with me today, our family actually, I was the brunter of this idea and did it. We raised a service dog from 7 weeks old until 14 months. And yesterday we had I'm going to be very proud about it. We had the very proud moment of bringing him back to the foundation. So he's actually going to go to serve a veteran or someone with PTSD. And so he spent 14 months with us. And he came to the office with me 5 days a week. And so when you ask me what success is the fact that I raised an amazing puppy from literally 7 weeks old to 14 months old, and he's going to go help someone have a better life. So at the end of the day, that's success totally for me. I don't know what tomorrow's going to bring, but I know if I can bring that kind of passion and energy and help somebody else, that's pretty cool. What else? The light is really bright. Yes? What single word would I use? You should really be asking that for my husband and my daughter. I'm kidding. I actually really think, so I would probably use the word that I would use would probably be authentic. I mean, literally what you see is what you get. And it's not always easy to be authentic or transparent. And so for me, I think that has led to my success. I think the reason that I can say that I'm successful because of all the people and why I stay and why I'm doing the things is because I share a lot of who I am and everything that I do. So it's literally blood, sweat, and tears. I give 110% to things. And I share these stories because I want people to get close and I want us to have that type of relationship where we should be able to talk and have dialogue. So I do think for me it's authentic. Yep. Got time for like one more. Yeah. Oh, good. What are some habits you're working on? Again, question for my family back there. Habits I'm working on for myself. So I actually thought, so I have a lot of people who come and talk to me, and actually a little bit ago I was interviewed by Harvard Business Review that ask like the things that I do. Like, I'm not very good at, everybody's always like, Deborah, you're amazing. Like, I mean, there's lines of people who come to see me and I'm always like, yeah, that's great. Like, so I'm trying really hard to say thank you, because that's always really important. So when people give you compliments, to say thank you. And again, like I said, not to sound egotistical, I love being the best person that I can be. And so saying thank you is one habit that I'm working on. Another habit, I am a fanatical soul cycler. I'm like kind of fanatical about that. Again, they would attest to that being true. I love working out. And for me, it's not just being able to work out. It's actually a mental break. So for those of you who have ever done it, it's 45 or 60 minutes in literally a dark room with really loud music. You can't have a cell phone. I can't have my watch on. I can't have any distractions. And so for me, it's making that a regular habit in my daily life, not just on the weekends, not just late at night, not just early in the morning, because it gives me that break and that release that I need for mentally 45 to 60 minutes of not really candidly caring. Is anybody trying to find me? I mean, I work, a lot, as we would all do, and again, whether that's personal or professional obligations. So for me, it's making that habit also known to people that I work with. We have a lot of people sometimes who will say, we work so much though, how do you get 5 minutes away? How do you get 45 minutes away? How do you get 60 minutes away? And so now I sponsor events, I take team members out, like we do lots of things so people can see it's okay for you to get up from what you're doing, stop what you're doing, get whatever that mental break is. I know they did a meditation before, so whether that's meditating, going to bike like I do, going to do running, going for an outdoor walk, you also don't need 45 minutes to take a break. You need a minute, right? And so trying to showcase and help other people understand how those habits are easy to put into their own lives are probably the two biggest ones that I'm working on right now. So with that, we're at time. I want to thank all of you for being here today. And again, good luck on your commitments. I'm going to hold you guys to them. So thank you.